I was a big fan of this Captain Gopinath, who had started Deccan Airlines and who had disrupted aviation industry in this country forever. And I remember his book called Simply Fly. And that evening, I told the folks, look, let's start looking for a domain called Simply I. And sitting that evening, all of us started searching on the phone. And as God would have it, there was nobody with a Simply HR in India, at least. We found somebody in US, somebody in Australia, and we grabbed the domains, and that is where it was.
Welcome to Inspire Someone Today podcast, a show where we dive into the stories and insights that has the power to create ripples of inspiration in your life. I'm your host Srikanth, and I'm thrilled to be with you on this journey of inspiration. Who do we have today? From the shop floors of Asia to the boardrooms of Network 18 and the entrepreneur leap with SimplyHR. Rajneesh Singh, as he is lovely called as RS, has seen how leadership evolves and how people stay constant. In this episode, we reflect on building culture that thrives on trust, navigating the rise of AI with empathy, and what surviving life-threatening cancer is all about and his perspective on life and purpose. I can promise one thing, a thoroughly candid conversation on work, life, and why being simply human might be the most powerful leadership skill of all. On this note, Aris, it's a joy to have you on this show of Inspire Someone today.
Thank you, Srikanth. Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for reaching out. Absolutely honored.
Likewise. So, Aris, as I mentioned, you had traversed from the factory floors to boardrooms to being your own boss. If I were to kind of start right from there, what are the key lessons that each segment of this career move from Asia to Network 18 Gillette and then finally being an entrepreneur?
Yeah, so, I thank God for all the wonderful opportunities that one got, not only the organizations that one worked with, but also the kind of people that one met along the way in all these three organizations which you clearly pointed out. And all of them have had a major bearing on my professional career. I would call Aisha as probably my foundation. And that is when a lot of things actually, from a pure HR standpoint, started taking root, as I would call it. Because it is very important in anybody's career that your foundation is solid. And that is when things are going to stay very strong for the longest time. As I moved into Gillette and Duracell, I would particularly name Duracell because that was the factory I was heading HR for. I think a very different experience happened there. I felt this is just an aha moment. It was a small plant, but I guess the opportunity was massive to do some really interesting path-breaking HR kind of work. And it also gave an opportunity for a situation where the plant was shut down. And so the whole shutdown experience itself was very unique of handling emotions, of handling, all kind of challenges that a shutdown throws up. So I would put Gillette and of course, then Gillette got acquired by Procter & Gamble. And so the whole merger acquisition was a different experience. So I think in those 7 years with Gillette, I had this amazing experience of a shutdown, of a M&A. That I would call as the testing period of my career. So if Aisha was the foundation, here was an opportunity where one got tested. And I think at Network 18, when you were at the pinnacle, when you got a role of a group at HR, of a very vibrant media organization, and you really cut away yourself from a manufacturing kind of life. This was a new zone, very, very, I would say, might I use the word chaotic? And, the day I joined the place, I knew that, if I'm coming from a 100-year-old stable Gillette kind of organization to this place, which is so full of action, one had to let go the past, and one had to just simply fall in love with chaos. And which is what I did. I thought, look, you got to thrive here. You got to just embrace this day-to-day news breaking organization, which is almost like touching million lives every day. So my story that way would be these three layers, that there was a foundation period, there was a testing period, and network 18 is where I would say there were a lot of application happened of all the learnings that, so I would call it a very nice three-layered process.
And all of those three layers catapulted into your entrepreneurial journey.
Absolutely. And which is where, one fine evening, five of my colleagues at Network 18 were sitting, grabbing a beer in the evening after work. And then we started discussing, okay, we've done this 5 years. What do we do next? And out came a thing, let's do something of our own. And that we have been managing HR for such a large organization, which has multiple entities. And we thought, why not just replicate this whole model outside? And so we thought, okay, let's start a HR outsource company. And sitting at the bar, we decided, okay, what do we call that company? And I was a big fan of this Captain Gopinath, who had started Deccan Airlines and who had disrupted aviation industry in this country forever. And I remember his book called Simply Fly. And that evening, I told the folks, look, let's start looking for a domain called SimplyHR. And sitting that evening, all of us started searching on the phone. And as God would have it, there was nobody with a SimplyHR in India, at least. We found somebody in US, somebody in Australia, and we grabbed the domains, and that is where it was. So that was, I would say, that evening, a new kind of a journey kicked off.
So, what triggered you to kind of create Simply HR while you had experiences at different organizations? What was the aha moment saying that, okay, now is the time? This is what I would want to do?
So I think, like I shared, I think the diversity of the experiences that one had gathered and also of having worked with such progressive companies, at times you feel, having worked in such organizations, you have seen the future. And you feel that, all this, if one can really package it pretty well, take it to the outside world, can we do wonders, and that is what an entrepreneur typically would like to look at, that is there an opportunity out there? And at that time, back in 2010, we felt we were at the cusp of a very interesting HR outsource story that was building up, because a lot of startups, a lot of family businesses wanting to transform, and we felt this is the time to go in. Of course, we did a lot of research. Some people were very excited. Some people cautioned us, Rajneesh, you're at the peak, and why are you doing this now? You've got everything going for you. But then, that is when you are at the peak is when the plunge should happen. It is the way I look at it. So I think, probably me having been financially far more secure, my other partners who came on board were far more, I wouldn't say really financially well, but I think they connected with the vision that one was talking about and the opportunity. So I think the whole market scenario is what drove us, and somewhere the whole inner confidence that gave us that whole momentum.
Now, looking back in 2025, RS, if you were to kind of look back at the decision, what are you proud of and what do you regret of?
That's an interesting question. I think all four partners, till this morning, we keep exchanging messages on WhatsApp. I think even on a Sunday when you're exchanging messages, you can imagine the whole action, which is kind of, it's stayed all for 15 years. So naturally, there's a lot of pride that all four of us carry. I think all of us carry a lot of, I guess, the sense of achievement that SimplyHR, which was never there till 2011 January, is now known to so many people. I think for having done that for a brand in the HR space, I think that itself is very, very self-satisfying, self-assuring. And we have truly enjoyed the entire journey of building something. Regret could have been, yes, on the way, few things, definitely some self-made, some COVID-made. So I guess 2-3 knocks here and there, which have definitely, and that's the beauty of, and I think the other pride has been, for me particularly at a personal level, is that we as a partners team have stayed as a unit. Many startups break and partners led, many of them. For me personally, to have, kept this unit tight has been a moment of pride for me, I would say. So regret, yes, couple of, I guess, investments, I would call it, couple of decisions, I would call it. We could have moved faster, perhaps. especially on the tech side of things. We've been slightly slow on that. But given that our main revenues were coming from outsourcing and advisory and other verticals, that has definitely helped us to stay afloat.
Great. And Aris, you are a huge proponent of the term simplicity. Shows off on your organization as well, Simply HR. What does it mean? Why did you coin this? What does it mean to you, your leadership principles, or on your entrepreneurial journey? Why simplicity?
So while I mentioned about Simplify and Captain Gopinath, it also goes back to probably at a home situation, at a very personal level. And I see my father as my role model from a simplicity standpoint. Here was a gentleman who was, he was an epitome of frugal living and quite okay with the way things were. Had a very, we built, after retirement, he built a house and for all his life worked in a PSU. And those were the times. So many of our parents have all worked in PSUs. He constructed a house, very normal, simple 2-bedroom. And I would observe him quite a bit, a deep thinker, long walks, an amazing worldview, so all that I think somewhere, and his own persona, even the basic dresses that he would wear, very bare minimum, right? I thought those were images that stayed with me. So I believe that a lot of things on simplicity come from our thoughts, our experiences, the kind of values that we carry. I think that becomes very, very critical. When we started Simply HR, the whole focus was that HR has become too complicated. There are huge jargons flying around. Can we simplify things, and keep HR as human as possible, So that was one of the reasons why. And of course, when we came down to the logo of Simply HR, if you would notice, it's a black elephant. And when I spoke to this lovely friend of mine in Mumbai, she runs her own design firm, and she came up with a couple of options. One was an owl, and the other one was an elephant. And so I told her, look, owl will go a bit on a different tangent here. So ullu banane wale HR hai. So I thought, let's stay with HR. And then we connected elephant with our elephant god Ganesh, who was again a favorite lord of mine. And then you could see a lot of connection of a HR professional with an elephant, with features, the nose, the big ears, the small mouth. All that actually then built our philosophy around simplicity.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that piece of history in the making of Simply HR. And Alice, you're somebody who has traversed, like we spoke, traversed multiple industries across decades. So I'm sure you'd have the best seat in the room to kind of see how leadership has transitioned over time from a pre-digital age to now the AI age. What's your take on how leadership has evolved? What do you see is evolving? What do you see that needs to need to strengthen further?
I believe in our times, I would say, and particularly the organizations that we discussed about, and I was very, very lucky to have worked with some amazing leaders in those three organizations. And I can name them also. Right from in iShare, say a person, Mr. Vikram Lal, who was the founder of iShare, Mr. Anil Sachdev, down to Gillette, particularly Duracell, Mr. Abhijit Das, who I look up a lot, and down to Network 18, Mr. Raghav Behel, whom I look up to a lot. Again, these were people who inspired a lot. And I think the inspiration would come largely because of their very deep involvement, I would say, in people. Their whole people focus was very clear, what they wanted to really build. And I believe very strongly, not speaking as a HR person, but it's a given that organizations that last, thrive are hugely focused on people. And that is where all these three organizations today also are where they are. So my sense is there was a time relationships really mattered a lot. Leadership those days would focus a lot on that. They would go beyond the employee, connect with the families. I think those were the times. But as tech came in, a different world definitely started happening. And so a lot of the BPOs coming in and the whole landscape started changing. And a lot of things then started becoming very transactional. And it was like a give and take. Leadership also then started, of course, kind of reimagining that how do you manage this workforce now? And so therefore, I think one started falling back on a lot of data. And of course, now we are into the AI era. But the great leaders still today are those who have maintained a fine balance between, touching lives of their employees as well as leveraging technology as much as it can. So I think it's people who are leaders who have really struck a fine balance between, as I've been calling it, touch and tech, are the people who are going to still stay relevant and at the leadership level. And I feel the more tech comes in, one would be expecting leaders to be extremely human, extremely, I would say, sensitive, and be very, very, I would say, somebody who is very approachable. I think those are the things that one would like to see as AI really comes in a big way.
I'll just take a lead from there.
Yeah.
What do you think will remain irreplaceably human as technology advances?
I think what will never get replaced is definitely, the whole basic emotions, I would say, right? I think those can never ever get replaced by an AI. The ability to understand somebody, the ability to listen to somebody, the ability to engage with somebody face to face. I think those are things that are never ever going to be replaced. And the leaders who master that and who sustain that are all going to be remembered. That when there was this wave of AI, my leader stood out and was still stayed connected.
And that's very important because we are going through a phase, a dichotomy of sorts. If you think about it, RS, is you have hundreds of friends on LinkedIn, Facebook, but you can count the number of friends you can kind of count as real.
Right.
You had thousands of likes if you were to kind of look at it,
Yeah.
but you're internally not happy. So there is a dichotomy that is prevailing, right? As much as tech is kind of connected all around, deep inside, either leaders or individuals at the work front or home front feel disconnected.
I fully agree with that. And I fall into that zone in some manner, in the sense that, yes, you got tons of followers on a LinkedIn, you got so many friends on a Facebook. In fact, today morning only, Facebook sends a survey to me that how are you finding Facebook? And one of the question in that was, are you happy with the number of friends that you have? And I was like, for a minute, okay, I looked up the responses. I said, look, this is a very interesting question, but I know how many, like you said, are very deeply connected, and so there are, I would say, 3-4 layers of friends on these platforms, and which is fair. I think that's the way you should be really looking at these platforms rather than getting too much consumed and overwhelmed with it. And so if you're fairly okay in looking at these platforms in a far balanced manner, these are good platforms to share ideas, thoughts, connecting, relationship management. I think those are the key takeaways, I would say. Yeah.
And honest, for somebody who's working so closely with the startup ecosystem, I think the headline message is, oh, the millennials, oh, the Gen Zs. And for all the wrong press that they get, I think they're also doing some fantastic work out there. So what does the younger generation truly seek from their leaders? If we were to kind of get into their mind and say, okay, this is what the younger lot is kind of looking forward to.
I think so. I have huge admiration for this. I would say the millennials and the Gen Z, and I don't know why they've become such a favorite punching bag. And the way I see all the four generations, and we are already curating some very interesting event around it in December, talking four generations at the workplace and how they need to thrive together. I feel that there has to be far more respect for these generation, the younger generation. I believe the leadership needs very clearly, they want a lot of transparency, if you really ask. When I say transparency, they would like to see a lot of credibility at play. That means what you say, you do. And you don't say something in an open house, in a town hall, and do exactly the opposite the next day. So on a Monday, you said, oh, we are doing great. And on a Friday, you say we are slashing 1,000 jobs. There is a huge problem out there. Number two, I would say the youngsters are wanting more dialogue in whatever manner you can do it. I know having a one-on-one dialogue or in a small group dialogue in whatever form, they want to be listened. If I take the AI into picture here, yes, it is very easy to palm off this whole activity that, okay, let the AI do the talking. But I think that will be really sad if I may say that. Leaders need to understand this younger generation is far more informed, far more aware, far more knowledgeable, and that's where they want to contribute a lot. So unless we strike the moments of dialogue with them, we are not really going to tap their real potential. Third thing, I feel this is a generation because they've been brought up on an overfeed of information. They like to stay informed, so don't give them surprises. I feel this is an organization which, periodically would like to know as much as possible, how are we doing? Many of them would actually be very forthcoming in helping their leaders, probably giving ideas, this is what we can do better. This we should stop. Why are we spending money on this? I feel rather than just brushing them aside, we should be tapping them far more.
No, that's a lovely call out, RS. I think, like you mentioned, lot many times this generation of millennials or Gen Z are a lot more misunderstood than understood.
Absolutely.
What would you recommend that leaders do, that HR leaders, business leaders do to bridge that gap, to better understand their expectations, better understand what they're seeking for? You gave some lovely insights. They want to be respected. They would like to have dialogue. There's no sub. This is basic human values at the end of the day: communication, respect, and no surprise.
Got it.
How do you bridge that gap?
So the only thing is that, say, if you're a very large organization, and I know there are a lot of apps today which can give you instant data on the mood of the organization today, or the health of the organization today, of the employees. I believe it's important that you take that data very seriously. Of course, again, leaders to understand this is very important. You introduce anything like this, you better be seen as somebody who's acting on that data that is coming to you. What are the people saying? Avoid doing such activities for the sake of doing that, right? And which is what I was saying at the beginning, that, it's a matter of credibility, right? So this generation sees you through very, very fast. So whether you're a large organization where you're depending on a survey kind of a tool, or you do town halls, open houses, or if you're a mid kind of a level organization where you could still take out time to meet a bunch of employees periodically, do that as a habit. Listen to them, grab whatever ideas, opportunities they are talking about. And if you are a small organization, I see no reason why you shouldn't be indulging in a one-on-one kind of a discussion. So net, what I would say is that unless that connect is there, these gaps can't be. You can't just apply something and expect that, things are going to go up, engagement is going to go up, people are going to be very excited. Lot of walk the talk, lot of lead by example, say what you mean, do what you mean. I think I know these are very simple kind of, I would say, slogans, but these need to be practiced more and more in today's time. I mean, in our times, probably, like I said, even a small, I remember one of the organizations, a monthly email going to the employees was good enough. People were very happy that they were getting informed. Today, you got to do far more than that. So the frequency of connect, I would say, it has to be far more. I would also, picking up my lessons from my other organizations is that, and which I said earlier on relationship, is that how do you really connect with them beyond them, their families? Many organizations deal with them just as a pair of hands. I don't think that is the way to really deal with this generation. This generation expects far more, far more. So many of them just quit a job without even a job in hand, purely because they felt this is not the right place for me. Well, the organization might turn around and say, oh, you were not a fit for us. But I believe mostly it's the other way around. The kids today take decisions, and they take informed decisions. And then that's why you see platforms like Glassdoor and all, which is available there. And organizations are fully mindful of seeing their scores on a platform like Glassdoor, how they are doing. I think leaders need to pick up data continuously, and this is like a treadmill generation. You get onto it, you will have to keep running with that. You can't have a time where you would like to kind of take a pause. So on the go action is what I would expect a lot of leaders to take.
If you were to kind of flip this around, what would you tell the millennials or the Gen Zs to kind of do differently to bridge the gap? What can they play as a part?
Very good question. No, I think they also need to understand. Look, this is also in many ways, and I was looking at it when we talked about it, and I would just put one word to all the four generations, if I may. I find this generation, and I had 4 Rs that I picked up. This is Gen Z is a rush generation, right? I mean, they want everything like an instant, and everybody has been discussing this, which is okay. I mean, look, and I heard these 2 words also, instant gratification and stuff like that, which is okay. I mean, we got to, reorient ourselves. How do you manage a rush? A millennial, for example, is a bunch which is because they've rushed and they're suddenly in a rust mode, right? And so they're suddenly trying to figure out, okay, how do I now, whatever I have done so far for 10, 15 years, is it enough to take me to the next level? The fourth one, the third one, Gen X, is very interesting. They are almost, they're getting so overwhelmed with this younger generation that they can do so many things. They start young, they start companies at this age. I think mentally that's a resign generation, if I may call it. They are resigning at that age, 45, 50. They're already deciding to quit corporate, can't handle it, or they made so much money that, enough. And the last one, baby boomers, people like us. I think we are in a very interesting stage of relevance, right? So that's the fourth R. How do people like us stay relevant? And I'm making a very, very, honest, straightforward statement. And that is where when, we were discussing at the intro stage, it is so important, generation on generation. I believe the word relevance has to be your cornerstone, right? So I think we're in a very interesting era, I would say.
Absolutely. I couldn't have kind of coined it better than the 4 Rs, and at a very interesting phase where we are. With the pace at which change is also happening, one constant question I keep getting from team members, from people outside the industry as well, is what is the balance between empathy and accountability? How, as a leader, can I strike that particular balance? If I am too soft, work doesn't get done. If I kind of push the envelope on getting stuff done, then I'm seen as rude. I'm seen as not having the empathy. So, what is the trick there?
If I just go back 5 minutes ago when I said striking a balance between touch and tech. Now, this is again a striking a balance between empathy and accountability, as you put it rightly, and which the younger generation is where a lot of us probably presumably struggle with. That why don't they take ownership, for example, and which is part of your accountability. But I believe, and that's why I was saying that to understand this generation or any other professional, it is very, very critical that you do understand the individual in and out, what he or she is bringing on the table, and what are the struggles, challenges that he or she might be having. And that is where it becomes very important that the word empathy comes into play. But we also need to be mindful, are we over empathetic? That's the flip side. I mean, if you go too soft, too nice, so yeah, there is a problem. And in my workshops, I keep telling people, please don't be a nice manager or a nice leader. People don't look forward to that. They want managers or leaders who take tough calls, who take tough decisions, who demand work. So and I've seen some of the best managers who do this beautifully. They'll take care of you. They'll ensure you are completely in sync, enjoying your work. But at the same time, they will also use the stick and ensure that there is 100% accountability. I think that's a skill that managers and leaders need. And it is, you can learn.
I think the key word there is don't strive to be a nice leader. Be a leader who is nice, but getting things done.
And one word that I use most is be effective. And with effectiveness, you will strike the balance between the two.
Great. RS closer home, your fraternity, the HR fraternity. I am of the notion that HR is just not HR's business. HR is everybody's business. With that in mind, how are you kind of seeing the whole function evolving. We did touch upon tech, we did touch upon AI. There's still need for that human connectedness, human centricity out there. How do you see HR shaping up? If any of our listeners are aspiring HR professionals, what would be a word of advice or two be for them to kind of get better in their trade?
Look, HR as a profession, and I was speaking somewhere to a young bunch of B school students, and I told them that HR is like a marathon, it's like a long distance running. It's not a 100-meter dash. It's not a 200-meter dash. If you're in for a long haul, then join HR, because HR is not instant stuff. It's not. And you expect that you're going to do something and get some immediate results, not going to happen, right? So it requires investment of time, effort, energy. I believe HR guys themselves need to be supremely fit. Mentally, I would say start with, and of course, then physically, This is a very demanding profession. So as much today HR has on the agenda the employee wellness, I feel to start that whole journey of employees' wellness, I think the HR wellness is far more critical, I would say, because this is a profession which is a very demanding, and it is a burnout profession. I have seen a lot of people quit HR because they just couldn't take this whole pressure of a day to day. But at the same time, I've seen a lot of people, actually non-HR people, having done beautifully in HR, right? They had no HR back. So I would say, like I said, I mean, one is your own wellness and a staying power in the game. But I think it is also very, very critical that your ability to really foresee scenarios, and which means how much are you clued on with not only your company, your product, the market, but the world. I feel HR guys still operate in a very, very narrow kind of a frame. The more they look beyond and the more they think future, better it would be to really be seen as a very, very important business partner. And which is where, if an AI is coming, how much are you really leveraging AI becomes very critical. How much are you really ensuring that the business benefits out of AI? I think that itself will be very, very critical. Lastly, I would say, again, going back to our whole focus on simplicity, that, people are anyway stressed quite a bit. How, as HR, we can simplify their lives and not really burden them. I feel they are anyways burdened with so much work pressure and what have you. HR can do a lot by simplifying things, and which means not doing the thinking bit all by yourself, but by co-creating a lot of interventions, right? Which means you got to sit with the line guys, with the business guys. Honestly, if you really ask me why so many relationships in my life, at a professional life, has stayed on, is because as a HR person, it was not only HR people I was engaging with. I had to connect with tons of people right across, up, down, middle, wherever. I believe that ability to meet, walk, engage are things that HR guys need to be working more on.
Yeah. And honestly, we are at a stage where the reimagining of each of the functions, just not HR's the functions, reimagining each of the functions, reimagining the success metrics. No longer engagement at attrition is a metric. It is far beyond that, right? I think those are the stuff that needs to kind of come to the fore.
100%, 100%. HR people, like I said, you do it with your half energy, half heart, not going to take you long in your career.
Yeah. And where we are as a country, as an industry, RS is a very, very interesting time, right? Lot of action happening. The entire world is looking up to India in terms of leadership. How can we as a country leapfrog? How can we kind of create this as a people innovation lab, people innovation hub? What are those 2, 3 things that we need to do?
Look, as a country, a lot needs to be done. I mean, I would, like I say, this is a problem country, right? And when I say problem country, that means if you flip it, it's an opportunity country, right?
Mhm.
There are tons of opportunities. And that is what I tell youngsters, that, don't just look for jobs, look to solve problems. Right?
Problems.
And that is where the whole beauty of entrepreneurship comes into play. And that is where it has been talked so much. right to the school level. And I'm so glad that we're starting about business at school levels, and how I wish that's done more. And we get youngsters to really imagine and think beyond. So for India to really become an innovation hub, it's a long way off. And one of the critical stumbling blocks is the mindset, I would say. The more we stay as a jugaad nation, innovation will happen, but of a very different kind, very short term, very low on quality. And that's not what is going to stand us out as a nation, honestly. And will it really sustain us or grow us will always remain questionable. So for me, the word innovation is massive. It's not to be taken lightly. That's why we keep discussing that Indians abroad are so brilliant, innovative, and they're working for such big organizations. But coming back home, yes, it is an opportunity. We got to get a lot of things right from at a very policy level to the governance level to the ground level. I still feel the way we look at employees as a pure the working population. There's so much to be done. Honestly, I mean, we still struggles with some very basic working conditions in some of our big organizations. Honestly. Our and it's still I'm still staying with the word that I used at the beginning, the mindset. That requires a massive shift. I mean, even the best of the organizations are still struggling in this country to provide a very bare minimum comfortable working place. I think the IT companies and perhaps the BPOs and all have did bring in a different kind of a workplace. Many manufacturing setups, SMEs, MSMEs, your heart breaks when you see that. But you also know, yes, they are also the backbone. But I guess it is very important for people who are leading such organizations to become great examples. If not now, when? And so when larger clients of yours come from outside to do due diligence of your workplaces, of your organizations, you do cover-ups, which last just that 1 week of visit of that future client of yours. And in a week's time, everything falls apart. So
Candidates.
yeah, so if you're still operating with that mindset, there is a problem. So yes, we are at a huge opportunity times, but we got to be mindful also that we have tons of challenges.
Can't agree more to that, Aris. And we are talking about a function which is filled with people, emotions, all of it. And I must say that I really appreciated the vulnerability that you kind of expressed to say that you want to talk something about your own personal moment, about resilience, about renewal. And that personal moment was how you battled yourself coming out of stage 4 cancer and then talking your story about a cancer survivor and how you kind of showed up with resilience. Walk us through that, how it has changed you as a person, how has it changed your outlook?
Yeah, I mean that was a very very interesting phase, and it's been now more than 4 years now. This was July of 2021 when I got diagnosed with colon cancer, stage 4. Everything happened very rapidly, and then I moved into an operation theater, which I had never in my life ever visited. But I thought this is all a great thing happening. I took it with a pinch of humor and fun. And I guess that was the only way to really handle it. And I knew at that moment, 10th of August, 2021, when I went in the OT, I didn't know whether I'm going to come out. But I think it is, the learning very clearly has been that this was a good pause in one's life. This was a good, I would say, kind of a recalibration moment in my mind. And then so naturally, once you came out of it or while you were battling it, and I still am in that process, I still go through 6 months of PET-CT scans, is that you got to stay supremely strong in your mind, in your head, to handle such scenarios, such crisis. The other thing, of course, one realized that, there's so much to do, and I don't know whether I have the time now. And that's where probably in my last 4.5 years, am I revisiting my bucket list more frequently? I guess so. And I feel that there's so much to do, both on the professional front, on the personal front. Spend, time with family, friends as much as possible. And yes, I also realized that given this scenario, given that I was a HR person, so much deeply involved with employees, leadership, I thought this was a personal case which should be also talked about for a very larger population. It could be families that are struggling with somebody struck with cancer or cancer patients themselves. And I think in these 4.5 years after I wrote my journal, which was called The Good Patient, which went quite viral at that time, I've been counseling so many cancer patients, motivating them. So therefore, you also look at these crises as probably God's own way of telling you that you got to do far more, and there is a larger purpose. So then, for me, the whole story of HR becomes very small when you're doing this kind of a work, which is around life and death. So I believe, I see it as a blessing, honestly, and to be using this to talk at various forums. I am very open about it whenever I'm conducting workshops, giving talks. I do close it with saying or sharing this with the audience. And naturally, people are very struck because they just couldn't imagine that for the last one full day, this guy has been conducting a workshop or has been speaking for last 2 hours. Is this guy right now? And that moment, I can sense in the room there is hope that you can fight. You know, and that's the spirit that you want to leave with the people, and that's for me is a huge thing.
No, that's so wonderful. What stuck with me, RS, was it's just not what you went through, but how you handled. It's very easy to kind of go down the slippery slope, play the victim card.
Correct.
How you have kind of played it around, given it a very positive spin, taking it as a mission, so to say that, okay, let me do something about it.
Absolutely. I think you use the right word. I would probably, yes, absolutely echo the word mission. It has become, honest. Probably is going to stay all my life.
So, what aided you in developing that kind of a mindset? What practices did you do? Or how did you even kind of get that kind of a will, that strong will, saying that you mentioned a very beautiful point when everything paused. Even when everything paused, there are certain things that became essential. What was they?
So look, as a person pre-cancer also, somewhere I was a guy who was a person full of life and living life to the full. I mean, all of my ex-colleagues, my friends would kind of vouch for that. My family would also see me as a very, very different character. So I guess that inbuilt thing probably became a strength. You really see life as a God's gift, and you got to gather as much courage inside to fight this. Like my father, I told you about my father. He was also struck with cancer, but his was a case which was again a very late stage, but he just survived 2 months, from the diagnosis to his passing away. Now, was that a reference point for me that he passed away in 2 months? Should I be doing 2 into X, whatever, and still be there? I don't know whether that played in my mind. I don't know, honestly. But I think it is largely for all the love and all the prayers that happened for me during that. I mean, I know that day when I was in the OT, there is so many people out there who kind of just prayed. And yeah, so I also believe in the power of prayers. And I believe that itself gave me so much of strength. I switched off myself while I was moved from the OT to the ICU to the room. For a week, I didn't see my phone. And I am a phone addict because my work is around the phone. And my wife, when I told her, okay, 16th of August, you give me the phone. And I was overwhelmed by the kind of messages that I was reading. And naturally, that gave me even more strength, that given this, how can you slip away? You just can't.
Wonderful, so lovely. Others, you did mention that you are a man who had a full life. You kind of had love, passion, everything going on for you. One insight that you can share about living fully, where others can learn from it without necessarily having to go through a crisis.
So I think my take is to live in the moment and live it fully, you know, and enjoy whatever you're doing. I think, whether it's a job, whether being in a family, your kids, parents. I think to live in the moment is what I would say is very, very critical. You don't know. Life has become so fragile anyway. COVID even more, right? Every age is being struck now with unforeseen scenarios. So I think the realization is that, and I believe, I mean, you got to make the most of what you have.
So true. Yeah. And you did mention about checking off things on your bucket list. So one of the things that is kind of doing its debut in 2026 is RS podcast. Tell us a bit about it.
Oh, very much. Yeah. So, and I'm glad I'm speaking about this on a podcast itself. And yeah, that I guess was a year ago thing when one of my friend in US, he sent a clip of a very old man who does a very nice podcast there. And he meets these very unusual entrepreneurs who are not that well known, but who are doing amazing work. And he just sent it to me. He said, Rajneesh, have a look at this. This is what you should be doing now, you know. And I'm sure, and he's also maybe 3, 4 years elder to me. And of course, a childhood buddy. So that night, I just couldn't sleep. And it set me thinking, And here was a scenario, my friend sitting in US, thinking like this. And I thought, okay, this is a great thought to, you know, kind of think over. And so it's taken a year to really shape up the whole thing. And then I started bouncing off the idea with few people, and I could see a lot of kind of good positive feedback coming in, and down to my wife and my child. And then, of course, I went back to the same design friend who did our logo for Simply HR, and she's been doing creatives for us all these 15 years. So when I told her, she was absolutely thrilled that RS, this is the moment. You got to do it now. And so when I told her this is what the show will be called, and she was all the more thrilled. Then I thought, okay, I have the first audience who is pretty much screwed up. Then she said, okay, let me add something to that. I said, yeah, please go ahead. So, and I think that's where she wrote that little tagline of Kuch Baatchi. And she said that keep it in English because then it will have a wider audience, whatever. So, and yeah, so that was it. And a month ago or so, then I took it to social media, and I think it's already generated decent amount of interest in family, friends, beyond. A lot of clients are very excited. He said, this is interesting. We want to know more about this. Some people are saying, okay, how are you going to do this? So as of yesterday, because this is the first month, I'm going to can the first shoot and we're going to do it at our home. Identified the first person also. And yesterday I was speaking with my ex-colleague who runs a production house. So I told him, send me the list of things that I need to set up. So yeah, this is a very important month. And like you said, 2026 is a time when we will take up some very interesting guests, interesting themes. But yes, I'll take it easy.
Absolutely. Wishing you loads of luck. I'm sure it will do really well. I'm a firm believer of good things will happen to good people.
No, and I was so happy. This is what I was saying, that a pattern starts developing. So when you connected and I see your thing inspire someone today, and I said, man, the word inspire has stayed in my life forever. And so many youngsters tell me this is the word they identify me with. Chief, this is who you are. You are inspiration. So when I saw your, the platform name, I was so happy. Like this is it.
This is the power of three round. The first of the power of three round question in RS is three books or podcasts or ideas that have shaped your philosophy.
One of the earliest books that I would have read, and which continues to have a great impact on my life, is this book called Maverick, which was by Ricardo Senla. And I think here was a man who was running an organization way ahead of its time. And for some reason, that just the title of that book is so, ingrained here that drives me in so many ways. And that is what has, so the connect of that with, say, for example, when you say the word idea, and I would stay with Maverick, is also the word imagine, and which is where, an organization like Apple was born, just around that word imagine. I believe Mavericks are people who think, and because they think, they imagine. And I believe that has left an impact. That was book one. Book two, I believe along the way came, and I think both of came along together, just here and there, were two books: Emotional Intelligence, Daniel Goleman, and then Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey. I think these three books honestly have been up there, and you can keep going back to them. My sense is, for any leader, for any professional, even at a personal level, there's so much learning in all these three.
Wonderful. Are three micro experiments that any manager can adapt to lead with empathy?
I think it's important to understand the meaning of empathy, what really revolves around that. And my sense is that empathy requires time. So you've got to take out time if you've got to be seen as a person who carries tons of empathy. I think the second part of it would be that, are you a person who is credible, who's genuine? That's a story that builds over a period of time. When people start experiencing one event after another event after another, and if they see a common thread, that is where your genuineness is really big. And the third one, I would call it, is a lot of, I would say, active listening, because that's very, very critical. So simply put, you've got to have the time to stay. If you want to build empathy, have that genuineness in you. And the third one, very important, is when you are in a dialogue built on around empathy, then you better be practicing active listening.
RS 10 years out, if you were to have a conversation with RS, your future self, what three pieces of advice would you give to your current self?
Okay. I think to my future self would be that, could I have started, could I have been an entrepreneur maybe 10 years early? That is one. Also, probably, could I have probably, I think one of the things that I would continue perhaps in that future self is, and which is what has driven me so much, is to keep thinking possibilities, right? That's something that I can't let go. And that I believe comes from the power of a brain. How much are you really using that is very critical. I mean, I could be just consuming, for example, reels full of songs and jokes and whatever. But I would also be actually consuming so much of knowledge, information, ideas, and those are all resources available to us. The third thing, I guess, which is the learning which we discussed during the cancer story, was that the future self also should stay as alive and kicking as
Itself.
stay the fun guy. People who meet also, and that's another message after the word that I shared with you about inspiration, that there is so much warmth that one brings at the very first engagement. So I guess, yeah, staying alive and kicking, staying warm is something that one would like to stay. Yeah, future self.
Wonderful. I'm sure your future self will love you for all of those things.
Because
RS, the last of the part of the round segment questions for you. If you were to kind of do a sum total of all the wonderful advice that you have received from colleagues or mentors or your ex-bosses, what three advices has stood with you that has helped you in your journey?
one of the advices and whenever I would, for example, during my corporate career, whenever I would switch jobs, for example, switch companies, one of the leaders whom I really admire, look up to, and I would always ask his opinion, he would ask just one question: how's the opportunity to do a lot of interesting work? And that summed it up for me, and so whenever I talk to also young people, I say, don't look at the opportunity from a monetary standpoint. Is there some exciting stuff that you're going to do, when you get digging up this opportunity? I believe that is something that has stayed with me. So whenever we take up, even a client work today as a business, we use this lens. And then whenever we feel that, this is a wrong organization where perhaps the values itself are not matching from the way a Simply HR works and the way the clients work, we've given up those assignments, right? Because that's the very core. I think the other thing that probably people, at least the colleagues would have said, is to also, be the person, be as approachable as you've always been.
And again, it goes back to what you mentioned earlier. That's foundation. If that foundation is so solid, hard, everything real you do is revolving around that. So true. How will the meaning of work evolve over the next decade? From the vantage point that you all at, how do you see this evolving?
So the model of work, that is a very interesting question again. And we have seen a serious disruption already with the advent of COVID. And a very small example has been people finding meaning of work. How much should it really consume my 24 hours? And people have started questioning that. A lot of people have, and of course the organizations also realized, and that's where, the whole concept of, say, a work from home, work from anywhere, all that is a buzz now, or a hybrid model of work. This were all unthinkable till March of 2020. We were in a very normal era of going to office 9 to 5, whatever, So I guess the future of work will be even more interesting, even more disruptive. With AI coming in, I believe a lot of jobs are going to be rewired, and therefore people are going to get perhaps more time to do some interesting stuff. Organizations need to be extremely intelligent. As much as we are calling artificial intelligence, I think the organizations need to be equally intelligent to understand and see this as a fantastic opportunity of how to really convert this whole situation to their advantage and create future workplaces which are thriving on the genius that a human brain brings. How are you going to tap into that? I believe the manufacturing to the service and, to the future, which is going to be even more high tech, how we still keep the human at the centerpiece will be very, very critical. So I'm sure a lot of more flexibility into the work is going to come. Employees are going to demand more flexibility, I believe. Yes, certain sectors you just can't touch because if certain things need to be manufactured by a machine, there's that much you can do. But a large part of working population could be looking at a far more flexible, far more, I would say, that's why I use the word work from anywhere. It's not going to be just work from home. People who could be operating from and that's going to be the beauty of it.
And you're seeing it in some shape and form. So it is only going to get redefined.
100%. And look at our firm itself. I mean, we were on the verge of shifting an office in 1st of April 2020. This office was being done up in Noida. And 3rd week of March, we get this idea.
Good Lord.
Well, it's all over. And till date, we've never felt the need of an office at all. Work is continuing.
Excellent. Aris, what legacy do you want SimplyHR, the Simply group, want to leave behind?
Very, very interesting question. And one of the things that I want to definitely comment here, thank God that this was not a firm which was named, say, after me or after some individual, right? That becomes a problem, right? Because once the individual is gone, then the whole, the firm legacy. I think choosing a name, SimplyHR, was somewhere it meant that this was an institution in the making, and we should stay the time. And of course, I think over the period of time, it's been a firm which has continuously evolved with the times. Like I said, some regrets, of course, we could have done something different, but as a legacy, I think it should stay as a firm which continuously evolves, learns, unlearns, look at competition even more closely. I think at some points we've missed that. And yes, end of the day, we have had, our team members, colleagues who stayed in the firm for a long, long time purely because our own internal HR was very strong. So to create those kind of experiences, would have been something that one had aspired, one would like to continue. And the last point, which I would like SimplyHR to continue to be, is to stay ethical, because I believe that's the heart of any business. If it has to stay solid and long term, and that again was a pure personal thing, that you stay ethical, then you are coming.
Awesome. Aris, when you talk to a HR professional, you kind of expect that you talk everything but about people. And what you have kind of shared with us is way beyond that. Your vulnerability, you're going back in time and sharing some of the things that worked well, didn't work well. Really appreciate the honesty you brought into this particular conversation. Before you and we sign off, this show is all about creating ripples of inspiration. As the new year is beckoning all of us, what's your Inspire Someone Today message to all of our listeners?
I think just the joy of being alive is to be lived to the full, is what I would like there to stay, and look at amazing role models around you to stay inspired. That's what I would leave everybody.
The joy of being alive, the joy of anticipating something nice, bigger, better can happen each and every day, and keep inspiring towards that. On that note, Aris, thank you so much for your time and wishing you the best of everything in 26 and beyond. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Inspire Someone Today. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off. Until next time, continue to carry the ripples of inspiration. Stay inspired, keep spreading the light.